Hi, Anne.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me for this interview today and having a chat. Can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Ann Osborn, and I am the CEO of the Rural Coffee Caravan, which is a little charity and completely embedded into Suffolk life now that addresses the causes and symptoms of loneliness and rural isolation right across the county.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions for you, and here's the first one.
Okay, how am I looking after myself? I suppose if I'm going to be brutally honest, I might say that I'm possibly not doing everything that I tell everybody else they should do. But I am trying to take time out from time to time. I've turned into a pen pusher, which is not what I am, but it's what's had to happen, and a thinker. We've had to think constantly about what we're going to do to stay relevant, how we're going to help the people that we want to help. Yeah, I think the way I look after myself is just to down tools and go and sit in the garden for a little while. But the way I look after the team is to keep in touch with them very, very regularly. We have a little WhatsApp group that's very informal, so they can chuck little stories at me and I can make sure that I'm asking after them. We might talk about something that's topical, just so that we just keep a connection going. We have video calling, we have little FaceTime groups. So that everybody can see everybody else, and if they are struggling, they know that they have to work a schedule that suits them. So they know that I'm not really so interested in them actually doing their spot on 37 and a half hours, 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. If they need to fit it in around other things that mean that their anxiety levels or their mental health or whatever it is better suited, then that's fine, and they know that's fine. The volunteers, the same, keeping in touch with them regularly. A lot of our volunteers are actually shielding or certainly not coming out because they fall into that bracket that we're asked to stay in till the end of June. A lot of them are now very active in their own immediate areas, but it's just the same old thing. It's keeping in touch, it's communication always. That's what we've been doing to the best of our ability.
That sounds just like you and Rural Coffee Caravan to look after other people. Thanks for that.
Okay, this is quite a tricky one because rural loneliness possibly hasn't changed that much. The people who were lonely before are lonely still. A lot of the people in rural areas that are experiencing loneliness are older, so therefore they're not working. So people who have been furloughed have now had to stay at home in the villages, but are also able to get out and about and go for walks. So it could be that we know in some areas, some people have been seeing a few more folk than they would normally. But it's that knowledge that freedom's been taken away from you that has made it very difficult for people in rural areas. I mean, it's hard enough to get out of rural areas most of the time as it is. You know, there's very limited public transport, and you may be waiting for someone to come and take you to the shops, your daughter, son-in-law, cousin, whatever it is. And of course, that just stopped. So people were very much stuck in their own locations. From our experience in the villages that we've been doing a lot of work in for a long time, we have seen, and I hope that it is in part to do with the work that we've been doing, but we have seen very rapid setting up of telephone trees or WhatsApp groups. There have been an amazing number of sort of a light version of Good Neighbour schemes starting up, and a lot of those have been in very rural areas. So and also rural folk are very stoic. So there's been a lot of coping, but what we have noticed is that we are managing to reach some of the people that perhaps we hadn't been able to reach before. We've had a little project going for the last few weeks where we've been out and about delivering bunches of flowers for no particular reason, just to say, you know, we're thinking of you and we haven't forgotten you. And we've had a lot of people saying, oh, I know you come to this village, but I haven't been, but I think I'll come now. Now I've met you, now I know who you are, I think I'll come now. So I'm hoping that we've managed to reach some of the harder to reach people which will be brilliant. But the surge in neighbourliness in rural communities is something that we've got to preserve and celebrate, because it's been fantastic, and that neighbourliness is what sustains communities. So whilst the volunteering with the Tribe app and the Good Sam and all the rest of it is wonderful, it is this next door neighbour reciprocal relationship that will build stronger communities. One of the biggest problems that we have in rural communities is for the people who are digitally excluded. And that can be for a variety of reasons. It can be that they don't have the expertise, they don't want the expertise, they don't have the devices, or they don't have the signal. And I think that that's something that everybody needs to be thinking about going forward, because I don't think life will come back offline. A lot has been put online through the pandemic, and that has added to the isolation for a lot of people, particularly those in rural areas where they don't have a signal. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that it's something that we have, all organisations have got to look at, because I think, as I say, we won't go back. And a lot of the online life that has happened through the pandemic will stay. So as volunteers move away, maybe they go back to work, maybe the apps become defunct. I don't quite know what the future of the volunteering apps is. It will leave a lot of people back being isolated, and tech would be fantastic if we could get it out to everybody, and we had the means of teaching a very simple basic program to the most IT shy. I think that would be a big step forward.
Like, you've described the extent of the loneliness in sort of deepest rural areas really well, and in the same way, it's heartening to hear about the neighbourliness that's out there. But around digital exclusion and the technical difficulties and with broadband and so on, it's an absolute must, isn't it? Because there are people, for example, out there who are receiving home care and are completely reliant on digital communication when family members can't see them during lockdown.
Mm-hmm. That's a very, very difficult question to answer at the moment. We have just had a trustee meeting, and we have decided that we're going to be using the whole of July to gather intelligence, if you like, about how people would like us to come back out. We'll be talking to local authorities to make sure that they're happy for us to come back out, and we'll be talking to all our volunteers to see how they feel. I know from Community Action Suffolk that they have a huge bank of volunteers that actually want stuff to do. They've enjoyed volunteering. They may never have done it before, so we're going to hopefully tap into that. I think that realistically we are going to need at least one volunteer, if not two volunteers, on every visit to comply with the CV Secure guidelines. So we've decided that we won't consider actually trying to go back out in any way that anyone would recognise before August, and we will spend the next month setting ourselves up for that. So we do have volunteers who want to come back, but we do have other volunteers who are very understandably nervous about coming back out again. So we're not going to put anybody in a position that they don't feel comfortable being in.
All right. And actually, the other thing is that volunteers who are shielding or who feel uncomfortable about doing anything right now are also suffering, because they're not getting to do what it is that they want to do, which is really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And there's a whole range of people in there who are having to stay at home because they have to shield, but have never considered themselves to be elderly or frail. Yeah. And actually, I think some of them are the ones that really appreciate the reciprocal nature of neighbourliness, because they will, if not now, in the future, they know that they will be able to repay the kindnesses. It will be a two-way relationship. But right now, it's quite hard to be identified as a vulnerable group when it's not how you've ever looked at yourself.
It reminds me of time banks and that model.
Well, personally, I hope that people will actually recognise now what loneliness feels like, that there will be a whole lot of people who have experienced it for the first time and now have hopefully a much greater insight into how some people live. This is just life for some people and has been for years. And that loneliness, to address the causes and symptoms of loneliness, it's much more than just services like us going in and trying to provide a social space in a rural place. It's something that needs to come into impact assessments that are done for every piece of policy or legislation. We have to work out how everything that happens from government down affects people and community. And if there is any learning that comes out of that, it will be the recognition of who actually keeps this country running, and how we perhaps have to look at the whole system and shift how we've thought about it before. I don't think loneliness is as difficult to sort out if you can approach it from that level. As we've there's so much talking about it. We all know what it does. We all know how harmful it is. And you and I and the other organisations addressing it are doing our absolute level best to sort out the causes and symptoms. I hate to use any military language because I just think that stigmatizes it even more. So I'm not tackling it, I'm not combating it or not fighting it, because then the people who are still lonely have been defeated or they're losers. So I'd much rather that we're responding to it and addressing it, but it has to come from the very top down. It has to be considered, I feel, by everybody. So I hope that there is some learning around that comes out of this.
Well said, Anne. Thank you. And I like the fact that you refer to your charity as a service, because it's not just a charity; it is a service for people that live in rural areas and who are otherwise lonely. Thank you very much for your thoughts, Anne.
My pleasure. Thank you.